Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Real podcast. We're so excited that you're with us. Each and every week, we're going to open up God's Word. We're going to have some discussion around what it means to live an intentional life. So let's listen in as we try to get real together.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Get Real podcast. My name is Brandon Ginden. I am the senior pastor at Real Life Ministries, Texas, and I am here with my good friend and ministry partner, Lori Arnold.
Hey friends.
And we are so glad that you're joining us here on this episode and part of our podcast family. And I just want to encourage you that if this is your first time joining an episode here on our podcast, that you'd consider going back and looking at the other or listening to the other episodes, because we are in a series right now on the fruit of the Spirit. And it's been quite a journey through this whole series has been a reflective and for both Lori and I, which is what makes this a fun podcast to do together, are different perspectives on it. And at the end of the day, through this, what we want to do is encourage you, help you by sharing our own successes, failures, strengths, weaknesses on various different topics, and why we just really lean into and trust the Lord and following Him, not only in our ministry lives, but as we lead and part of our own families and walking with our kids and just what it looks like to walk out every day in a real way of following Jesus. And so we both hope that this, our entire podcast is a blessing to you and encourages you. And if it does, that you would share that with your friends and those in social media. And so we're going to continue on in this series on the fruit of the Spirit. And like I've done each week, I want to read this, the fruit of the Spirit that we find in Galatians. And I would encourage you, if you have your Bibles, to join along with me or listen, depending on how you're following us. And so the scripture is found in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, and it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." Well, today's a part of the fruit of the Spirit that we're going to look at, you're already laughing, is gentleness. And Lori, before we started the episode today, you and I were talking, and we'll bring our listeners and viewers in on some of that, because as I said to you, I'm going to confess right on the front end that this one of them all, like when you look at it, the term gentleness, like, oh, that should be pretty simple. It's gentle. Like this shouldn't be that confusing. And when I look at the whole list, for me personally, gentleness is convoluted into a lot of different things. It's like connected, and it's weird for me because of, I think, like when I think of it kind of in the reverse, what causes me to not be gentle in a situation, and it's directly then connects to patience or me being impatient. And then that connects to something in kind of a little bit with love, and it starts to spiderweb really fast. And I look at it and go, well, what causes me to not be gentle in a given situation? And so I know we're going to talk about some of that, but it gets into this really weird mess for me in my head, and is linked to other things. And so anyway, I'll maybe jump into that a little more in a minute, but kind of your thoughts on it and how it hits you, and maybe you share with those listening.
All right, here we go. So gentleness for me is that aspect or characteristic of the fruit that I know that I know that I know. This is the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Like,
okay. Yeah.
That is the piece where I know, like there's no way I could just do that on my own.
Right.
This is my reminder.
Okay.
When I read this, it's gentleness. And I kind of agree with you. I don't know if you were exactly saying this part, but where my brain went was gentleness can sound easy. Like, oh, just be gentle.
Right.
Like I think of a child, I worked with kids for 10 years and, be gentle, be gentle. We would always tell the kids to be gentle when they're like banging their friend's head, or
right.
whatever. And, we be gentle.
Yep.
And I'm going to read something. I read this earlier, when I just did a Google search on the word on, just this passage, particularly gentleness.
Yeah.
And this popped up. Gentleness, also translated meekness, does not mean weakness. Rather, it involves humility and thankfulness towards God and polite, restrained behavior toward others.
Polite, restrained behavior. Okay.
And, I love how God works because this week I've had to apologize 2 times to people already. Like, because of I didn't display gentleness. I was not gentle. And while my words were true, they weren't, I didn't say them they weren't gentle. It just wasn't gentle. And so this is going to be fun.
Yeah. When you read the definition.
Yeah.
So the word gentleness connects to the word meek or meekness. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount.
Mm-hmm.
The meek shall inherit the earth. And I go, oh, crud. Right. Let's stuff starts together because the term in there is restraint. And I know the term meek, when I've preached a sermon on this, you kind of do this trick where you ask the crowd to, you think of a term, when you use the word meekness or an animal, what comes to your mind, an animal, when you think of the term meek?
Yeah.
And most time people will say a mouse or a rabbit or something like that. But the truth is, meekness, and now that definition connects it to gentleness, is not that at all.
Right.
It's a thoroughbred horse. It means incredible power or strength under control, restrained or bridled.
Yeah.
Right. And I think about that, this aspect of the fruit. You're demonstrating that when you're in a situation to where you could come off the top rope, or like you said, our words might be right, might be true.
Yeah.
But it's how we deliver it.
Yes.
Is where gentleness comes in, or I guess the opposite of it would be harsh or unrestrained or unbridled.
Yeah.
And that then gets back into this heart issue to me. One of the things that we talked about is we get ourselves in trouble when we demand to be right.
Yeah.
I'm right and you are wrong. And there's certainly always truth is in here, but it's how we do it. And sometimes my desire to be right trumps over the top of my relationship with somebody. Yeah. And I think that's a little bit that you were talking about when you had to come back, and you said twice, I've had to come back and apologize.
Yeah.
And so some of that, so what are your thoughts?
Oh, definitely. For me, they're all connected, as you mentioned. And it makes me think about what we're going to talk about on our next episode, but self-control a little bit too, because for me, that's when you're talking about restraint. I don't want that. I don't want to be restrained. I want to say what I want to say, how I want to say it. And I want everybody to know exactly how I feel.
Right.
So, cause I deserve that, that's what I feel in those moments. It's a very fleshly response. It is not godly. And once again, that's why I say that I know that this is something that the Holy Spirit changes in me as I grow in the Lord, as I spend time with him, as I try to be more like him and respond like him and love like he does. And so I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the reminder even today. I was like, I needed to read this, prior to this morning. I probably should have read that passage that I read yesterday. Yeah. Considering my behavior, things might have gone a little bit better, So it's definitely, when I think about that, it's in those moments that I'm not being restrained, and the restraint it's not negative. It's not negative, but I think that sometimes I think of it as a negative thing. Like I just said, I don't want to be restrained, but being restrained in the Lord, there is a comfort there, and there's actually freedom there, right? To know, and the freedom comes from me trusting in who he is, trusting that he's going to do what he needs to do, first of all.
Right.
As long as I continue to do my part, God will always do his. And if I'm trusting him as opposed to trying to make myself be right or win, whatever, if it's an argument or debate, whatever it may be, it's unnecessary. And then he wins.
Right.
He wins because it's not about me. At the end of the day, it's about him. And so, yeah, there's a lot. I have many words.
Well, yeah. When you were talking, I think about a couple things came to my mind. Is one, our model is Jesus, and we look at his life, and there were certainly at times when he confronted. So it's not, and challenged, whether it be the Pharisees or confronted somebody that was in sin or somebody that had an incorrect belief or whatever. We see, there was conflict.
Yeah.
And confrontation around Jesus all the time. But when you look at some of those situations that he went into, he often would ask a question or, he would do it in such a way that I would look at it and go, wow, that was really gentle because he doesn't have to be gentle in that. Like it could be way more harsh. I mean, I think of the time, after the resurrection when he's with Peter and they come onto the shore, they're having breakfast. Jesus kind of takes Peter to the side and doesn't look at him and go, you like abandoned me, dude. You, where were you? You denied me. You ran, they didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
And there had to be kind of this sheepish Peter kicking rocks and like, oh boy, how's this going to go? And Jesus said, do you love me? And he acts in a gentle way towards Peter and restores Peter. And that's the picture that comes to my mind. And I think about it for me, what I wrestle with, as I said earlier, this is just all connected, is one of my big buttons that gets pushed is if somebody asks my opinion on something, like, hey, what do you think of this? Or would you give me input or insight into it? And I start to do that. And if maybe I get like cut off or somebody doesn't want to do it, or I give my idea or thought and then they just disregard it or whatever, it pushes this button in me of respect, or I don't know how to label it. It just pushes a button. Yeah. And then I kind of go to this feeling of, well, that was a waste of time. And then that leads to me to go kind of sometimes respond very harsh, like, well, do whatever you want then, or some type of snide remark that'll dismiss it or push them off, or why'd you even ask me kind of thing, or what. It causes me to not be restrained. Yeah. And what comes out of my mouth is not relational. Yeah. Or gentle. Yeah. And then it sends into a loop to where I become impatient with the person. Fruit of the Spirit goes out the window. Yeah. And it's now a flesh response. And I just look at that and go, how could I do that different? Yeah. Because you're right. The response needs to come back to and go, Lord, I need your help right now. Spirit, I need you to help me. I feel that flesh come up in me and my demand to be right. Yes. And why'd you even come talk to me then? Yes. That's not godly. Yeah. And so this is an area for me of separating out some of these things and going, okay, this is an area I can grow in. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For me too. Yeah. Like, so one of the ways that I combat that, like, is I make sure, I try to when I have to have, hard conversations with people. And I know it's going to be tough. I know how I'm feeling about it. I go to the Lord. I try to remember to always go to the Lord first. Lord, please guide my lips, guide my tongue, guide my ears to listen, listen well, close my mouth when I need to close my mouth, and things that don't always have to be said. See, I was raised in a family that everything needs to be said. Okay. Like, if you have an opinion, voice it. And I love my family. They know that. And they know this is true. If they're listening right now and they have a disagreement with me, they know that I'm telling the truth right now. Yes. But, we don't hold back. And so it's kind of in many ways, I think it has been good because we are honest with one another, but sometimes it can be harsh. It can be very harsh. It's not very gentle. And I remember even my mom told me one time, she's like, well, I just can't talk to you because you're too sensitive. And I'm like, no, you just kind of talked to me like in a way that made me feel kind of little bitty, you know, like, she wasn't trying to, we just say what's on our mind. And that's how she was raised. That's how I was raised by, especially her side. My dad's family's his side's a lot different, but we say what's on our mind. Like if we don't like your outfit, the minute you walk in the door, we gonna let you know, you know, like I remember my cousin, one of my cousins walked through the door on Easter. He's wearing like pastel clothes and he looked great. Right. And my other cousin goes, oh, look at you looking like the Easter bunny. Like soon as he walked in, I was like, man, shots fired. Yeah. You know, so those are the things that the Lord is working on with me, especially as I lead a team. And it can be a team in my situation. I'm talking about the worship team, but wherever you are, you know, whatever it looks like at work, whether it's your family, whether it's your neighbors, the people that you spend time with, look at how you're treating those people. Cause I have to apologize sometimes, even to the worship team and let them know, hey guys, when I said this yesterday, like here is my heart. And it may have come across a certain kind of way and I don't want you to feel whatever, but, they know me well enough now. I think the majority of them know me well enough. Maybe the new ones still have to learn, but that's something that I'm always working on. But the only way that I can do that is by being in relationship with the Lord, because like I said, this is something, my natural fleshly response is not the way that it should be. It is not to be like Jesus in this way. And I don't even like to say that, but it's true.
Sure. I think one of the things I think that's really important that when I was listening to you to grab is when we recognize we haven't, you said, I go back to and make that right or to solve that or to resolve it and ask for forgiveness. Or I think that's a critical point in this. I think that's critical when we look at any of the aspects of the fruit of the Spirit is to go, if I've been a person that has, one of the previous ones that's not really been, say of peace and have been, just antagonistic or whatever and go, man, I just haven't, that hasn't been me, and owning that and going, well, that's partly because me and Jesus haven't been good. And I can come back in and make that right. That is a huge part of this. That is actually demonstrating fruit, the fruit of the Spirit. And so I think that's an important part. I just really commend you for doing that. The other part that to me, well, like you were talking mostly on a team or a kind of almost within your family, it's like across this way, like shoulder to shoulder type. And I would just bring in an aspect in also like with our kids of gentleness, because this is an area where at times I have not done this well with my own kids. And I think of like in sports situations where, I've had my daughters come to me and say, hey dad, what did you think about this game or whatever? And there's been, or they didn't ask at all. And I jumped in and was like, man, that, you need to work on that more or whatever. And said something, and I really try to tell every parent this, if your kid goes out and if they're can comprehend the sport, they're 12 years old and they go out and they strike out 3 times. Your kid does not need you to tell them they had a bad game.
Right.
They're fully aware of it, painfully aware of it. And so coming in and go, man, you stunk today or whatever the thing is not being gentle. And to be able to go, no, they need me to be a parent. Yeah. And a parent in a good way, in a healthy way, comes in and understands that and responds in a godly way, which would be to demonstrate gentleness, restrained, godly behavior in that. And, there's at times we need to get on our kids, and there's times when we need to understand and go, man, I don't need to pour fuel on the fire right now. That isn't going to make them better. Right. And understanding some of the differences in there. I remember Kevin and I were having conversations about our kids and coaching our kids through some things. And I remember, I could take you right to the spot. He and I were standing in the lobby one day and we were just kind of lamenting together. Like we did not want to respond in gentle ways, neither one of us, to the situation that our kids were in.
Yeah.
And we both just kind of took this deep breath and stepped back and were like, okay, here's how I got to enter into it.
Yeah.
And it was really good. I remember that. So I think a couple things that I would say that I know I have to do is I just taking that from you of going, are there situations I need to go back and kind of mend or correct? But I think also finding others around you and go, hey, let me process this with you before I go back in. Cause I would tend to not be gentle here.
Yeah.
And so anyway, final thoughts on this.
That was going to be mine is once again, it matters who your people are. It matters who your company is.
That's
because even just yesterday morning, I had a rough morning and my gentle spirit was not leading the way. And so, I'm so grateful that I have people around me that I can go to and ask, hey, can you speak into this? Because I know, I already know, like my thumbs are not about to text exactly what they need to text, and I need help because I don't want it to come across a certain way. But all that to say, it matters who you're spending your time with and who you've got, who's holding you accountable, who do you have to glean from and to learn from. So that's super important.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hope for everybody today, just taking from some of our success, failures, struggles, little victories along the way and being able to learn and grow. And I hope, again, in all of this, that it propels you towards Jesus, challenges you to be abiding in him and walking in this spirit. And so, again, grateful for all of you joining us. I want to encourage you, if this blessed you, to share it with friends and those out there and let them know about our podcast and to spread the word. So God bless you all.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Get Real podcast today. My hope each and every week is that you're able to take the content, apply it to your life, that it becomes more of who you are and less of what you do, and that we live an intentional life together. If you're interested in supporting the work of ministry here at Real Life Texas, we'd like to invite you to do that by going to reallifetexas.org/give and supporting us today.